Some Christians are very convinced about the divinity of Christ, but they're not so sure about the humanity of Jesus. They want to make Jesus Christ into a God walking around on the earth in the disguise of a human being. This teaching goes all the way back to the early centuries. A group called the Docetists said Jesus only seemed to be human. He didn't really feel pain. He didn't really get born like the rest of us in the agonies of Mary's birth. He didn't really die like the rest of us. It only appeared that way because God could not be so vulnerable to things fleshly.
I'd like to know what you think. Is Jesus human?
When I read Scripture, I see all the signs of Jesus' humanity. He did experience pain. He was hungry. He was even tempted as we are. Indeed, at the beginning of his ministry and at the end, he was tempted. He didn't know everything because the Scripture tells us he grew in wisdom as well as in stature. So we see at many points in the New Testament story of Jesus how he was vulnerable. In Jesus Christ, the man of Nazareth, God came to us to share our common lot. Why this identification? Why this solidarity with human beings? The kind of God Christians believe in is a God who is vulnerable. God is not going to solve all our problems by fiat or by force. As the early church fathers and mothers spoke about it, God is going to try to persuade us. God is going to enter into the moil and toil of our lives and win us over. That means that Jesus Christ is going to be subject to all the things that we are subject to. And in that struggle with sin and evil and suffering and death and ignorance, God shall prevail, but only on our turf, albeit on God's terms.
How could Jesus be human, but at the same time without sin?
In the book of Hebrews, it says that Christ was tempted as we are, yet without sin. Now, what does that mean? It means that he was not only truly human in the sense that we're all human, with our clay feet, with our vulnerabilities, with our pains, with our death. It means as well that he was rightly human. He was not only what we are, but what we ought to be. We pursue the night, he turns and is fixed upon the light. He followed unswervingly God's purposes, never deviating from the way he was called to be toward God. He was a model of what we ought to be, meeting, conquering temptation and sin. In the language of the old theologians, in order to do the work of Christ, the atoning work, as it was called, we'll be talking about that in the next lesson, the prophetic, priestly, and royal offices of Christ. In order to do those things, he had to be present in our midst, not only as a real human, but as a right and obedient human, thus tempted as we are, yet without sin.
Where does the mother of Jesus, Mary, fit into our understanding of the person of Christ?
Mary appears in the Scriptures and in the creeds of the church, and in some churches has a very prominent place. Not so always in Protestantism, but in recent days, all Christians in this ecumenical period in which we live, Protestants, Catholics, Orthodox, are beginning to think more about the purpose and role of Mary. Indeed, women seeking for role models in the church often look to the mother of Jesus. Mary was the first believer. And more, the Magnificat, or Mary's song, is a powerful witness to the kind of God with whom we have to do in Jesus Christ. You remember the words from the first chapter of Luke, Mary's Magnificat. God has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. Mary's song is teaching us about a God who shares our common lot, who is partial toward the hungry and the hurt, and who is for and with the rejected, the outcast, the sinner, the oppressed.